About a month ago, I did an episode on the earth element, and the feedback was so good, you guys. Thank you for sending in your feedback on that personality type. So many of you shared that, yeah, that's me. It's interesting. Earth element is actually my missing element. What do I mean by that? It means it's the one that I probably need to integrate the most. I'm actually a strong wood element. So I am all about idea, action, and following through. But if I'm not nourished, grounded, and sustained, excuse me, I will sort of fizzle out in the fire stage. So again, just kind of shows how the dynamics of the elements when they're working together in a cycle, kind of the flow and what you can expect from them. So again, I said these personality type episodes were a big hit. And so I'm going to do an episode on all of them. Eventually, I'll get through all of them. But today we're going to focus on the metal. Now, you might see yourself as a metal. You might be in a relationship with a metal. You might work with a metal. It'll be interesting to hear everyone's feedback on this one as well. A few things to remember about the elements. There are 5, right? Water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. The thing that makes the elements different is that they work in a cycle. Now, that cycle can be constructive, it can be destructive. We see that in nature. But that is really what makes them different from any other archetypes or systems that we have, such as human design profiles, Enneagram, numerology, zodiac, Chinese zodiac. All of those are archetypes that we can use to look at our life and our personality and how we move through it, how we nurture our relationships, all of those things. Now, when it comes to the 5 elements, again, rooted in Taoist philosophy, these elemental archetypes, we have them, all 5 of them, but we are usually dominated by 1 or 2, sometimes 3, and the other ones are not used or don't give us as much comfort, so we tend to ignore them. But I find that when we integrate all of the elements into our lives, we feel more aligned with our path, the direction we're going. We're more at peace and ease with the way that things are flowing because we're essentially flowing with that cycle of life. So let's jump into the metal element. And again, you might see yourself as a metal, you might know a metal. It's important as I do each of these, you'll notice, oh, I definitely have metal tendencies when it comes to this area of my life. But then I see I'm very earthy when it comes to this area. Or, so like for me, example, I already mentioned I'm a strong wood, but I'm a wood water, meaning I actually am really good at integrating that intuitive, deep understanding, self-reflecting side of myself, where there could be like a wood fire, where it's just like wood is just nonstop going, and they tend to lack that self-reflection piece. So let's dive into metal. Now, metals, just like literal metal, they are cool, right? They are cool, calm, and collected. They are highly organized people. Metals love structure. They pay attention to the details, right? And they have a love for quality over quantity. So metals tend to set pretty high standards. And they enjoy indulging in finer things in life because it's almost like metals don't have the patience or the desire to waste their time, right? With distractions, with junk, with things that just don't align with their usually high values. Now, again, these are traits of a balanced metal that is aligned with their element. When a metal is out of balance, they tend to always be running late. They get caught up in the missed details. They struggle to stay organized. They struggle to focus. They struggle to move forward in their life, whether that's at home or in work. So most metals are, again, when balanced, they tend to be go, go, go. They're always engaged in something. It's like they're on this mission. But when they're out of balance, metals tend to stagnate. Life literally for them stops moving forward. Now, metals' mission here in life, again, a dominant metal, their mission is to become a master at letting go, releasing, surrendering. Because of that, just like a knife or scissors can cut, they cut out anything that distracts them, anything that feels toxic to them, anything that feels unnecessary. Nothing, if it doesn't align with their values, if it feels like it's just junk in the way, they cut it out. They're good at hearing and listening to their intuition and using their intellect then to discern their next step or what needs to go. Now, they can be a bit stoic, which in that they come across as emotionless or even unhappy. They tend to keep their thoughts and their emotions to themselves because they feel like other people's opinions, judgments, or concerns are only going to clutter their own mental landscape. Okay? They want to keep their conscience clear. They feel that they know what's best for them, and you don't. Now, metals are, in a way, on this like lonely spiritual quest, which for a lot of them, that actually might be a very subconscious journey, meaning they don't really know they're on one, right? But they tend to be highly spiritual, highly intuitive, like I said. But where they get imbalanced is via their emotions and not honoring the emotional structure, for a lack of better word here, in other people. It's as if they can't deal with that. They can't deal with other people's issues and emotions. Imbalanced metals tend to either detach from people and their emotions altogether, or they judge them harshly for their emotional state because it simply makes the metal uncomfortable. Metals need that comfort, that safety, that sense of stability in any partnership or any job, any of that. And if they can find a way to comfortably allow others or circumstances have their own emotional experience without judgment, it can actually be a really big heart opener for a metal. It doesn't really matter what the emotion. For a metal, all of them makes them uncomfortable. So it can be anger, sadness, another person's grief especially hits a metal hard. They can be uncomfortable around someone who is overly joyful or happy. It really doesn't matter. It's more of if it's a heightened state of emotion, it's probably too much for a metal type. So relationship-wise, it is challenging to be in one with a metal, or I guess I should say an imbalanced metal. Again, they have high standards, and so it's challenging for anyone to be able to meet them. And that includes themselves. Even though they are harsh judges of others, they probably judge themselves the most, both consciously and unconsciously. They put a lot of pressure on themselves because of that high attention to detail. They tend to be perfectionists, right? They need things to be in order before they can move forward in any way. And so for a lot of metals, this actually holds them back. When they feel held back, they find it hard to get out of that cycle of, I have this desire, but perfectionism holds them back from execution. And so they distract themselves by engaging in activities to keep them busy, but never really making any progress. You'll often hear an unbalanced metal tell you that they just can't seem to find the time. But you see them doing all these things so unnecessarily. They are creating the busyness as a distraction from their perfectionism. And it's almost like it's in plain sight. Everyone else sees it but them. And again, this is something they do unconsciously. They're not aware they're doing it. But if metals can learn to release that need to be perfect, they will be more able to accept their own shortcomings as well as those of other people. So let's shift to the body and the emotions. So metals, as I said, are good at balancing intellect and intuition. However, when a metal is too focused in their mind, their thoughts, they're ruminating over the details, they tend to lose connection with their heart, which is connected to intuition. And it's also where they struggle in relationships. Their constant need for control and high standards pushes other people away because that other person feels like they'll just never measure up. It's like it's only what metal wants, only what metal needs, only what metal can tolerate in the relationship, right? That's sort of the dynamic from the person on the receiving end. So opening that heart space again is such a vital component to the metal's strive for a more balanced state. And because of that heart space, the organs associated to metal are our lungs and large intestines. In Chinese medicine, every element is connected to an organ and other body parts. So, of course, the heart space is connected to the lungs, with the lungs holding the emotion of grief or extreme sadness. So, metal's life lesson is mastering the art of release and letting go. Exhalation of the lungs releases toxic carbon dioxide. Release of the large intestine releases toxic waste. So, understanding the mind-body emotion connection, we see how holding on to grief by ruminating thoughts and repeating these same patterns over and over again prevent metals from letting go. And it can create this toxicity or dysfunction or dis-ease in the body. So again, the heart space is composed of the lungs, the literal heart, the breast, upper back pain, shoulder issues. The large intestines might show up as digestive issues, mineral deficiencies, right? Like literal metal imbalances, issues with the reproductive organs. When unprocessed emotions are held on to in the body, these are the areas that we see them showing up in the form of disease, illness, pain, etc. I have to mention my disclaimer, of course. This is not to diagnose you or to ask you to self-diagnose. The intention of this episode is just a way for you to understand yourself just a little bit more, right? If you're a metal or if you're in a relationship with a metal, it's no different than understanding your zodiac sign. It can reveal so much in a way that helps you move, through your life circumstances and relationships with a little bit more ease. Personal story, I actually just parted ways with a friend of over 30 years who is a dominant metal. Now, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm a dominant wood. And there's actually a lot of similarities with metals and woods. In a relationship, they're actually one of the most challenging partnerships, partly due to that. And, I'm not going to really get into that today. But I'd say the primary difference between the two is the emotional structure. Woods tend to be governed by anger, frustration, resentment. And metals, as I've already described, are able to detach in a more cool, calm demeanor with what seems like very little emotion. And although most people would say, oh my gosh, that's so sad. Like, how did it get to the point of no return, right? You decide to end a relationship instead of working through it. Well, for me, and this is why I love talking about the elements, because it helps shed light on why people are the way they are. And if we understood people from their elemental makeup, we can just allow them to be who they naturally are without feeling like their behavior is an attack on us. Now, I still voiced my frustration in our last communication in my wood way. I know that I'm on this podcast and I sound jolly and excited and calm and clear and collected, but I still can have a very terse tongue. I'll be the first to admit it. right? So my frustrated wood energy was still very activated in the moment. However, because I also understand that metals need to move on from something, even if it's a relationship that isn't serving their highest good, doesn't feel like they're allowing themselves to find the level of respect that they need for themselves, or it isn't resonating, a friendship or a situation isn't resonating with their path in life, I've been able to lovingly also just let go. You know, it it feels like it's been a slow death for some time, and I think that we both, again, because there are similarities, acknowledge that and have accepted that. So to some, what may seem sad or maybe even unnecessary to a metal and a wood, we both know what's best. So, if you are a metal or in a relationship with a metal, what is resonating with you about this episode? Let me know. My email is always in the show notes, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, my friends, so much love and gratitude.